Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. So, I'm really excited today because I have got Bhavin Shah with me today. Now, Bhavin is a seasoned ServiceNow and service management leader. He's got over 20 years' experience in IT, service management, enterprise solutions, and he has played a pivotal role in helping organizations really streamline operations, improve efficiency, and unlock the full potential of the ServiceNow platform for them. So I'm really, really happy to introduce Bhavin, and thanks for coming on to the show today.
Lovely to be here, Farah, and it's been a while. We've been trying to coordinate this, but absolutely thrilled to be here.
I know. And there's been so much exciting things that have happened in your career as well. And
Indeed, indeed.
yeah, and look, for anybody that doesn't know Bhavin, obviously, he has recently joined an organization. Well, not say recently. How long has it been now,
It's
Bhavin?
just over a year,
Wow, yeah, for VCO, so that's really
correct.
exciting. So, but for anybody who doesn't know you and your sort of backstory, it'll be just amazing to hear how you even first got introduced to ServiceNow and how you got in the position that you are today.
So ServiceNow, gosh, that goes back some time. So let's go back all the way maybe to 2012. This is where my first introduction to ServiceNow happened. I was working for based here in the UK, but working for a California-based pharma organization, and we were out searching for a ticketing tool. And the reason for that at that time was that we were consolidating our IT operations into a single entity to be able to work in single processes, etc. And of course, California based, and naturally, ServiceNow kind of landed in there. So that's where my exposure to ServiceNow actually began, from the Aspen version of it. So
Wow.
literally the first version. And we only implemented the basic three processes: incident, change, and request at that time, which are very, very different conversations today compared to what it was back in 2012.
How are they different for anybody that, like, for me who doesn't know?
So if you think about, if you know, as you know, the ServiceNow platform now, today,
Yeah.
as it is
Uh-huh.
today, back, they were just starting out. It was all about how do we log tickets, how do we harmonize it, how do we
Mm,
at that time also the industry was going through this concept of introducing the service concept, right? So it was less about the tickets but more about the service. So that concept was being introduced. Of course, ITIL was playing an influence. Now all of that is done and dusted. Like 20 years ago, that's bread and butter stuff. Is out of the box, whereas we were
right.
trying to, I think, fill the box at that time.
Oh wow, wow, that's amazing. So, oh, that's wonderful. And in terms of your career, like obviously, you were with ServiceNow for the first release. Have you always been in ServiceNow the whole time, or?
I have not. So as I've worked through different industry sectors, I have been exposed to lots of ITSM tools, others like front range heat, of course BMC. I've also implemented something called Sunrise, which I
Oh
don't even know if
wow.
it exists today. But I think throughout my career, it's always been interesting to see how each of these tool sets have their own strengths and weaknesses, let's say. And I always had a tendency to sort of default to ServiceNow because of its flexibility on what it was able to deliver.
Mm, yeah, that's amazing. Obviously the fact that you've always been drawn back to the ServiceNow side of things from a career perspective, for anybody that's new and deciding, okay, where should I base my career on, would you recommend ServiceNow as a career path for somebody, let's say, who's just maybe finished university and they're deciding what to do?
I would definitely recommend them to keep their options open, right? So firstly, maybe try and getting an understanding on what is it that you're trying to achieve, what is it, or why are you trying to achieve that as well. Once you've got that kind of understanding, and by the way, it's okay to change a decision on that. So you come out, you can start somewhere, but few months in or a couple of years in, you might think, actually, I want to do something different. Then
Mm.
that's okay. But I would say keep all options open. Learn as you explore these different options, and you will know very quickly where you want to be landing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when you were navigating your own personal career, like, can you tell us about like the in terms of mindset, what kind of attitude really got you further in your career compared to, say, other people that fell behind?
I think for me, it's always been, and it still is being curious, right? Always wanting to learn more, always wanting to understand how different business sectors operate, for example. Having been through my journey, I've been in pharmaceuticals, I've been in manufacturing, I have been in financial services, and so on. And each of them have different offerings to give. So I've always been learning throughout my career, and I think that just gives me more energy to want to learn more. I think so. So curiosity was a big mindset
Mm,
enabler that I needed to keep on. Um, but also, I think the fact that throughout the journey, I was open to the fact that if I'm trying out different things or trying out implementing new projects, and let's say there was the outcomes were not successful, or maybe along the way there were setbacks, is keeping
mm,
an open mind to learn from those,
yes,
and growing throughout. And I think that's enabled me to, let's say, propel forward
yeah.
as I've progressed over the years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know what? I do love that because, it's like if you're curious and you want to learn, with that comes motivation. And did you feel like you had a really good support network in terms of like mentors and management that really encourage you to be curious,
I, I,
Yeah.
I think so. The short answer is yes, definitely. I think throughout my careers, I've had fantastic leadership throughout, um, but and leadership that not only sort of supported me, but also challenged me in different ways, and that I think enabled me to grow a bit more and a bit further in and think slightly differently, think broader, think deeper, and understand deeper. But I think leadership is not the only thing that has been my support network, but I also think my colleagues, my peers, and my team that might have been directly or indirectly reporting to me, that has been a real confidence booster throughout.
Yes. Yeah, I love that because it is true. It's like if your team, look up to you and value your advice, as leaders, it does give you a confidence boost. And I think like we kind of forget that because you always look at leaders and you always think, oh, they're on this like, you know, cloud or pedestal, and but actually they have feelings too, and
They do.
how a team reacts back,
Yeah,
there
exactly.
is. Yeah, that's great. And just talking about sort of like leadership qualities, like um for anybody that wants, a career, as much as like when companies interview people, they're interviewing for their team, but at the same time, people do think, oh, do I want to work for this company as well? So what do you think of the good traits that if somebody's looking to join a ServiceNow organization, these are the traits you should be looking for from a leadership perspective, where you can learn and be curious?
So I guess some of the things that I'd probably look at are, firstly, on the professional side,
Mm,
understanding of, okay, what are the skills, what's the experience? Definitely, get under the skin of that, because I think that in the industry today, that seems to be really, really prominent to be able to stand out, and it also attracts the fact that okay, you've self-invested in yourself, you've grown yourself, whether it's through your company or yourself, that's okay. But it tells me that actually there is that appetite to learn, and if I want to invest in my team, then this would be a good aspect to consider. The
yes.
other side, I think, is the personal side on the individual themselves, right? So the things that I would be probably thinking about is, how do individuals navigate through challenges? How do they navigate through difficult conversations, right? So communication aspects, humility, empathy, those types of things are really important. Whether you're seeking a career as a developer and therefore may not be faced with the customers directly or the clients directly, or whether you are going to be on the front end, it doesn't matter, because these qualities are, for me, are really, really important. And I think they make a team work better together as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way how you brought up empathy and humility, because sometimes people can think, oh, are these like are these traits that I will get trampled on? But actually, no, it's not, is it?
No, no,
Because
it's
yeah,
definitely not. I think there are, in today's world, I think they are so much more sought after because of
mm,
how fast-paced everything is, and how things just progress. One day you could be doing X, and tomorrow you could be doing Y, and therefore
yes,
to be able to navigate that, it's very different. Whereas
yeah,
previously, people have gone into organizations and they said, okay, here's a job spec, and by the way, this is what you'll be doing. Okay, you go in, clock in at 9 o'clock, out at 5 o'clock, Monday to Friday.
yeah.
You come home. Now it's very different. There's a lot more agility, and therefore I think individuals need to have that adaptability within
Mm.
themselves, to keep up.
Absolutely, and it's it's like when you're trying to navigate, politics, in an organization, you have to have that tact and diplomacy, right? So, yeah, no, that's incredible. So it's great, some great advice there, brilliant. And it also, like, it is very competitive in today's like job landscape market,
Hmm.
right? So, and just thinking back to your career, you know, I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs, because everybody goes through it. There have been challenging times for everybody. Obviously, resilience plays a key role in, everybody's makeup, especially when you've reached the heights that you have. So, what's your personal, like, how have you built that resilience throughout the years, and how do you bounce back from setbacks,
So,
essentially?
so I think, I had, wrongly or rightly, I had early exposure to understanding and managing, self-insight, right? So
Yeah.
reflecting on myself, on some of my behaviors, and behaviors that might be driven by other individuals or things that might have been happening around me. And I think having learned those in so many different flavors, colors, sizes,
Yeah.
has put me in this situation where I think i- setbacks will occur,
Yeah.
and that's okay. We will all learn from that. But it's also important to then understand, what are we going to do about it differently next time, right? What have we learned from that? So for me, resilience kind of comes from, trying to be calm, collected throughout, being open, to hear what people have to tell me, but also being able to contribute, as
Yes.
needed, right? So
Yeah.
I think for me, being part of, an environment where I'm supportive and also I am supported, I
Yes.
think has played a significant, role,
Mm.
in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's like if you feel supported and then it's like you support others, it's almost like a mirror effect, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like how you treat others, you will get, it's karma, isn't it? It's
yeah,
it's what you get back. So yeah,
yeah,
I do really like that. So yeah, no,
yeah.
that's absolutely wonderful. And in like in mental health is such a huge topic these days, right? So in today's world, it's all about looking after your emotional well-being, because that will give you success in the long run, right? So how do you prioritize your own sort of self-care in this aspect, or do you so you don't get overwhelmed and
So in again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think in today's world where things are so fast-paced,
yeah.
it is so important to think about yourself and have
Mm,
time for yourself. I think whether that's stepping away at lunchtime, mandatory, you just step away for 30, 40 minutes just to disconnect or do
Yeah.
something different.
Uh-huh.
But physical activity, movement of any kind is my ethos. That's what
Mm.
I like doing. I tend to hike, so we
Oh,
hike over
wow.
weekends. But I try and go to the gym as well almost every day if I can do it.
Yeah.
I have started getting into running more
Oh,
recently as
wow.
well. So for me personally, all of these things I think give me a lot of energy to be able to deal with what I may have to deal with
Yes.
professionally and also personally. Don't forget, this is not just about the work placement. The workplace is also influence what may be going on in one's personal life at home, family
Mm.
situations, etc. So all
Yeah.
of those aspects are really key. So I think the point that you raise around self-care and how that is important to today's world, it's something that everyone should reflect on
Yes.
as a must.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, do you know, I saw this article actually. It was one of the co-founders from LinkedIn, and he said, "Oh, today's kind of generation, if you want work-life balance, if you are in the startup mode of your business, forget it. You're not going to make it." Like, I just thought, "Oh, wow, okay, this is a controversial." Well, I would, because obviously, like, not that your business is startup mode, but how do you feel about, because that's a very 1980s 1990s approach to work, right, and
So
building a business. Yeah.
yeah, I think the thought process may be slightly different
Mm,
in that maybe that statement. I don't know where they might
yeah.
be coming from, but
Yeah.
in today's world, I think the number of startups that come up
Yeah.
on a weekly basis, there is
Mm,
so much going on, and
mm,
we are now seeing this. If we stick with technology for a moment, we are
yeah.
now seeing this really huge uptake of AI, right? And look at businesses that are steaming up just on this front today.
Yes.
And so the only way these are coming up is, and they're being successful, is because they are being able to, they're furnished with people that have got the willingness to contribute, to learn, take
Yeah.
risks,
Mm.
and grow in that sense. So I think it's a little bit different
Yeah,
nowadays.
I think so, right? Yeah, because that's the thing. Because I think back then, like you say, we didn't have technology to kind of, help us as much. And whereas
Hmm.
now, it's almost like we're using technology to be able to save time, right? To
Correct.
give back, our time,
Yeah.
and then we can sort of spend it on, with family, with friends,
Yeah.
and not having to work till 10 o'clock at night every night. So
Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
no, I think that's really good. That's really good. So yeah, no, definitely. And just
Farah,
kind of,
I just wanted to add one more thing around
yeah,
the mental health and well-being
yes,
things. One other
yes,
thing that sort of drives me is volunteering, right? So I do a fair amount of volunteering as well. People say to me, "Where do you get the time?" I actually make time to do volunteering, and I think this concept of giving back, whether it's through a charity, through whatever aspect of volunteering, is so important. I'm even starting to kind of talk to my kids about that. That look, it's really important to have these things, and I think. Going back to our earlier point around humility, I think these are some of the qualities that are quite good to have in an
mm,
individual.
yeah, I think that's incredible. Yeah, and this is the thing. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I don't have the time," or
Yeah,
I don't have the capacity to do it. But I think things like this, you have to make time, and
yeah.
because it's the rewards you get, would be so much greater,
Yeah,
from a
it gives
life
me
perspective.
exactly because I get to interact with so many different people from
Mm,
different backgrounds of life,
mm.
and that gives me a lot more energy. So yeah, it's really powerful actually.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really amazing. I love that. So, and just kind of going back to where you were talking about learning, how that's such an important trait for somebody to possess. ServiceNow, it's so rapidly evolving. There's two upgrades a year that happen, and
Yeah.
there's always new features, new updates happening. So, how can, let's say, young professionals stay up to date? Like, what are your sort of tips and trips tips that you go to?
So for me, staying with a lot of the ServiceNow channels themselves, so whether it's webinars, events, there's the whole ServiceNow community that's out there. Being visible on there, so not just um, getting output from those areas, but also contributing. I think it's really, really important. Um, there's tons of forums, different flavors, on specific modules or blogs.
Hmm.
I would be, those are the things that I would be consuming. I'd be contributing to those.
Yeah.
I'm not able to do that as actively as I would want, but for me, it's also about personally participating at events and
Mm.
conferences, which is really, really important in that. So anybody who's coming on board, there is so many areas that you could be exploring. Even a platform like LinkedIn nowadays has got
Yeah.
so much to offer in this space. So don't worry about where you start, but start somewhere,
Yeah.
and then that will lead you to other areas, and you'll grow naturally.
Yeah,
I think.
I totally agree. And like for example, even like being a recruiter, I always try and attend the ServiceNow developer meetups. And honestly, like I've learnt so much,
Yeah.
from attending and playing the quizzes and joining in on the fun. And also you get to talk to so many people when you're there. So, particularly let's say you've just done the next gen course, or, you're really new, or even really, really experienced, right? There's such a good like different various peoples from across the
Yes.
walk, and everyone honestly is so helpful, like
Yeah.
as in you could be, and I always hear this, I always hear, oh well, if you need any help, reach out to me,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to help you, and I think that's honestly
It,
gold mine.
it is, and I think one of these philosophies that I kind of have, and I encourage people to think about is don't only learn but also teach others, right? So
Mm,
the more you share your knowledge, somehow it is also going to give you a gain in some way, shape, or form. So I
yeah,
really believe in that, and
yeah,
and that's also how you make stronger and bigger networks
yeah.
around you.
Definitely. I did a LinkedIn post actually where I talked about the power of the ServiceNow community and how it's really untapped. And yeah, I highly echo what you've just said in
Hmm.
terms of, because people are always posting questions on there, and it's almost like this is where you say do some voluntary work. This could be
Yeah,
somebody's voluntary work, right?
exactly.
So yeah, and it's like help out, answer a question someone's stuck on, or just need some general advice, or sometimes even like a little bit of motivation, right? So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
am
exactly.
I doing the right thing? Should I carry on? So but yeah, I definitely think it's really, because I feel like when I speak to people and I ask them, when do you use the ServiceNow community? It's usually like, if they're not an active participant, it's like, oh, when they're like stuck, or
Stuck on something very specific.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and they're
exactly,
just like, oh, I've
exactly.
got nobody to ask
Yeah,
around me. Okay, I need to go on there.
yeah.
But I think, yeah, you could definitely use it as a much more platform.
Correct, correct.
But also there's the events. So
Yes,
obviously there's knowledge,
correct.
which is a huge event. And I know a lot of companies do fund people going out there, but I met so many people last year that paid for themselves, took
Yes,
their own annual leave, and I was like, oh wow, and they were like, yeah, but it's my passion, I love it, and they
yeah,
I learned so much from being here.
yeah. I've
So
I've done that once for so after I'd been through a company the first time, I don't know, there was just so much energy that I came away with, so much
yes,
knowledge, so much
yeah,
learning. Yes, there is the whole, because of where it's hosted, etc. There's a whole boost of positive aroma that's floating
yeah,
around you. But I wanted to go back. It made me want to go back
mm,
because I met so many different people, so many talented individuals out there.
yes,
But
yeah,
also, I was able to interact with quite a few businesses who
Yes.
and try to understand the journeys that they've taken, and for me that's the learning that I took away. So
Yeah.
the following year, the company tight budgets, etc. That's okay.
Yes.
So I said, look, I'm going to contribute and self-fund, and I'm going to go. So I did that, and I'll be going to Knowledge 25 this year as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
so if anybody wants to meet up with Bhavin, please reach out to him.
that's
He'll
it.
be happy to to say hello. And yeah, and that's the thing. And it is a great event because you see people from across the world. So it's not
Yes,
just okay, the people that are local to you.
correct.
But yeah, it's you know what? It's like I met so many people there and they were like, look, I this it's like my holiday, this is my passion. I love it. It's not a bad location, right?
No,
It's fun
exactly.
and there's lots of free events on, right? So
Yeah,
you can end up like not having to spend that much,
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
careful. So yeah, no, that's amazing. That is so wonderful. And just going back to your conversation where we were having about, the trait of humility, how you know, it's such an essential trait to have, right? I mean, I know you, Bavin, and you're probably one of the most humble people that I've met, but at the same time, you know, equally as ambitious, but which is fantastic. How do you personally yourself, how have you always remained so grounded, and had, been this incredibly humble, amazing person and got to the position you are today?
Um, so I think it probably ties back to a couple of things I've said already around, keep being curious and wanting to learn, but also wanting to pick up new challenges. I think that's one of the areas that I, used to be shying away from. If you kind of took me back 15, 17 years, I would not want to be in the forefront of picking up a new challenge. By challenge, I mean something on a global scale, something that's quite significant. And now for me, it's like I'm really open to it. That's okay. It comes with risks, and it comes with its advantages, successes, challenges. But I know I'm going to, do my best
Yeah,
to progress as much as I want
yeah,
in that. And having sort of received, one of the things that I'm used to is sort of having 360 feedback, right? So you get feedback from higher managers versus your peers and others that you interact with within the business. And I think that has given me a lot more self-insight into, okay, how do I think wider, broader, understand deeper what some of the challenges may be, or what are the outcomes that we're seeking.
yes,
That kind of helps me drive that. Um, as an individual, but I have to say that, I do find myself constantly in positions where I've got a set of individuals, whether it's leadership, my team, that are really propelling together with me as well. So that
yeah.
I think a combination of those aspects kind of brings it round.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I've known you for a while, for a while now, and you're very engaging, so I can see how, your customers, your team, your bosses, really, because you've got this very calm aura about you, but you still get the job done, and I
Yeah.
love that. And also
Yeah.
you're very, very hardworking. I think that's a trait that we shouldn't bypass.
No,
It's
for sure.
as much as it's like everybody loves work-life balance, hard work and dedication still
Oh no,
gets you to the top,
there's
right?
number of
So
midnight oils that I've burned, and that's okay. Again, those are part and parcel of many roles
yeah,
nowadays,
yeah,
and if you have to do that once or twice over a period of time, that's okay.
yeah, yeah,
And again, more than likely, you're not going to be in it on your own, right? So you're as a
yes,
collective, you've
yeah,
got an objective that you're trying to target, and
uh-huh,
at the end of it will come a celebration of success, right?
yes.
If not, there'll be a learning exercise. That's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully
Yeah,
the cake at the end of it. So
that's it.
everybody wants the cake, right? So then right, we've done it. We've achieved it. So yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So yeah, and I've always admired that quality about yourself. And anybody
Thank
that
you.
goes lucky enough to go work for you, I think that's like, you've got a great boss there, and that's what you want. Because it's true what they say. It's like it's like everybody's world is so individual. It's how you see the world, and it's like the people you surround yourself with. It's how you behave. It's like karma. And I
Yeah,
really believe in that, because someone down the road can have a completely different outlook on the world, and
yeah.
compared to how you are. And I think it's a lot to do with your environment that you personally build out for
Correct,
yourself,
correct. And
so.
for me, there's also a level of openness, right? So
Mm,
it's I'm I might have things that I might have to do as an individual, but most of the objectives when you're in an organization or in an enterprise, there's
yes.
always a collective, right? So
Yeah.
how are we adding value? How we collect,
Mm,
have we got all the skill set that we need to achieve the targets? Where do we need to invest?
mm,
How do we do things differently? What have we learned so far?
yeah.
So for me, it's always a mechanism of trying to work together as a team and bring everybody along the journey.
Yeah,
I think it's really
definitely.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like, your listening skills are just another level, right? So and I feel that's a really important trait as well, is that you listen, but you
Yeah,
listen to what they're actually saying, and pick up on maybe the not the context that they're not saying,
yeah.
right? The
There might be something
subcontext.
else. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly
it's
that.
about being
Yeah,
kind of aware, and I think
yeah,
that makes a huge difference as well. And how you and I suppose it goes back to the curiosity part, right? It's about
yeah,
asking the right questions, but once you get those answers, it's about, okay, thinking about it and then formulating, okay, so now
yeah.
I understand, so yeah. Which is
Exactly.
great. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, amazing. I mean, just reflecting on your own personal career, like, what advice would you give to young kind of ServiceNow professionals that are looking to kind of enter, the industry, or follow like a similar path, to what you've kind of done? Like, what would you say advice would be?
Um, So I think first things is, or initially, what I would say is strive for progress rather than perfection. I think it's really important to start somewhere, set some goals, chase the goals, learn along the way. I think, Farah, some of the things we've talked about up to now already in this conversation, be open to learning, be open to be criticized. It's okay, because you're going to grow from that.
Mm,
Um, be somebody that's in a network that's a strong network around you, right? Of individuals who are going to not only support you in your journey, but are also going to contribute to where you think your journey should be going, influence it, right? So for
yeah.
me, surround yourself with those kind of individuals. Network is so important, I feel, nowadays. Yes, you've got your certifications, your qualifications, your education backgrounds. I get that. But I also feel that the less people I know, the less I know, right? So,
Mm,
there's always going to be a situation where I walk into a room of 5 people. Each of those 5 people know something that I don't, right?
yeah.
So I think, and then one of the things I've said previously in this conversation is, don't just be open to learn, but also be open to teach others, right? And I think that there's a great aspect in that.
Yeah.
Engaging and communicating with all levels of people is a really good thing, because at the end of the
Mm.
day, we are all humans, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love that advice. That's amazing. So, and look, my final question, okay, if you could think back to the future, right? If you could go, Marty McFly now, if you could go back in a time machine and talk to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give him?
gosh, that's going to be a long conversation, right?
We got all day. Let's go. No.
So I think for me, personally, for myself, I think if I had the ability or the knowledge or the skill to be able to think wider, think deeper, slightly earlier in my career, I think that would have been interesting, even if it was just at university, right? Because
Yeah.
for me, it was all about, okay, here is a module that I'm going to be studying, here's a set of exams, get it done. But actually, how did the pieces all come together? If I had that kind of concept in my mind, I think things could have been slightly different. And I was always striving for perfection. Always had to get certain grades because of peer pressure, whatever. But now I actually understand that it's not all about that, right? It's the fact that you go in, you try something, and that's okay if you're not successful. You've
Mm.
tried, you've given it your best.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess lastly, one of the things I would say to myself, 21-year-old self, is look after your health.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, no, brilliant. No, that's brilliant. Just touching back on that perfection piece, did you feel that it stopped you from doing things because you were like, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. So if I
Correct.
can't do it perfect, I'll leave it to somebody
That
else. And
that was
yeah,
exactly it, right?
really,
So it
yeah,
was just like, okay, this is my goal. I have to achieve this goal. There's nothing else around it. Here is my tunnel vision.
yeah,
Whereas I think I needed a lot more in the periphery, and
mm,
that came a little bit later in life.
yeah, yeah,
And I think if I had that ability sooner,
yeah.
then I think outcomes would have been maybe slightly different.
That's really interesting because usually it's kind of like the other way round. You're a little bit reckless, in your teenage, early 20s because you're like, oh, I could do anything. And so you're slightly reckless and then you kind of go down this path and then you realize actually quality matters and
Yeah,
it's better to be perfectionist and choose one thing and be good at it rather than yeah. So that's really
yeah,
interesting, like
yeah,
that you think that way and it's almost like you kind of like need the balance, right?
yeah.
You need
And
the balance,
And I
yeah.
think maybe part of my upbringing or where I came from was kind of leading, from that because,
Mm,
I was born and brought up in Kenya,
yeah,
and lifestyle was very different at that point. And of course, I moved to the UK for university education,
yeah,
so
yeah,
completely new environment, completely new culture to adapt into.
yeah,
And so my objective, as far as I was concerned, was I'm here for university. I need to get my degree, and
yes,
then we'll see where that goes. But
yeah,
actually, I think it's very different now. People who are coming in out of university or
mm,
going even into university, going through
mm,
that with my son at the moment, who will be
yeah,
starting university this September.
wow,
And it's a very, I can, having been to so many university visits, I can see that there's so much more information out there. And I just wish some of that was there at that time
oh
before.
really, oh wow, what kind of information are you like,
You
for
ju-
example?
if you think about, I'll give you an example. What are all the different options you could have if you pick a particular degree, right? Back in the
Mm,
day when I was coming from this, which is feels like millennials ago, it was like, okay, you have four paths in front of you, pick one. And
right,
nowadays it's very
yeah,
different. There's a lot of overlapping that's going on.
mm,
You could go into a degree but end up in a completely different career,
yes, yeah, yeah,
because you've picked up some skills and so on and so forth.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think it was, for me, it feels like it was a bit different.
yeah,
And had I known a little bit more at that point, it could have been slightly different. Not that
yeah.
it's bad at the moment. I'm not saying that at all.
No, no. But yeah, no, absolutely. It's a bit like the sliding doors, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like you could, 5 minutes late on the tube and you end up with a completely different life. So yeah, no, that's really good. So, but you're happy, right? And I think
very happy.
great.
I,
And
I,
I think you're doing
I
an amazing job.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, that's brilliant. So, look, I just want to say a huge thank you to Bhavin. It's been incredibly um, brilliant to have you on. I know we've been trying to like book this in for ages, so I'm really glad it's happened. And thank you so much for sharing with everybody today. It's a real honor. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Farah. It's been absolutely thrilling to be here. Thank you.